When the clock strikes midnight, the murmurs begin. But this isn't just another spooky story time. It's a bone-chilling blend of shadowy fiction, disturbing true crime, eerie legends, and interviews that just might haunt you. From cursed hallways to the darkest corners of the human psyche, nothing is off the table. And if our voices have found you, it may already be too late. New episodes drop each week. Follow Murmurs at midnight and invite the darkness in.
Some girls vanish all at once. Chapter 1, The Devil's Backbone. Eminence, Missouri, tucked deep where the Ozarks pitch upward and limestone bluffs nudge the low-hanging clouds, isn't a place folks stumble across. You don't end up here on accident. You've got to mean it. And even then, you might find yourself wondering if the town meant for you to come at all. Down in a quiet canyon, carved more by time than tools, the current river winds slow and glassy past sycamores whose roots clutch the bank like knuckles. The mornings have a taste to them, sharp, resinous. Pine needles steeped in dew. Underneath that, something else lingers. Not unpleasant, but off. Like the back corner of a cellar where nobody stores anything anymore. The old-timers, folks with long memories and more superstition than teeth, say the land here breathes. You'd think they were being poetic, but they're not. Stand still around dawn, and if the air's right, you feel it underfoot. The ground pulling in air, letting it go. Slow and deliberate, like sleep, or something imitating it. Now, no one brings up the devil's backbone outright, not if they can help it. But they haven't forgotten. It juts northwest of town like a spine snapped sideways, a crooked ridge with trees that lean as if they've heard things they'd rather not repeat. Nothing grows right up there. Animals skirt around it. Birds stop singing near the base. Phones lose signal. Watches skip. Even the light feels warped, like it's bouncing off something that shouldn't be there. Meanwhile, down on Main Street, life ambles along like a rusted fan on a porch in July. Crooked storefronts, paint flaking like old skin. The air smells of fried grease and river mud, and the shop signs hang from rusted hooks, still swaying from storms long past. At McNulty's Feed and Grain, someone's always out front with a card table, selling jam, turnips, or whatever else grew funny-shaped this season. And at Shirley's Cafe, the day beats its first steady rhythm. By 7 sharp, it's half full. Farmers, widows, retired loggers whose ball caps are more thread than fabric. The door wheezes when it opens, drawing in heat with every new arrival. "Hot one already," muttered Hank Bramble, peeling off his John Deere cap and rubbing sweat from his temple. "Felt like a damn sauna before the sun even cleared the ridge." "Humidity'll bend steel if you let it," Donnie Millwright said, half scowling at his oatmeal. "Wanda's charging $2.50 for cucumbers now. Might as well slap 'em with a barcode." "Organic, my ass," Shirley called over her shoulder, pouring black coffee without asking. "Put a buzzword on a turd and someone'll call it artisan." A chuckle drifted from the booth by the window. Agnes Pike, sharp as vinegar and just as clear, leaned in with that look in her eye, the one she got before saying something folks didn't want to hear. "You hear about that kid camping near the backbone? Said something circled at 10 at night, scratched at the nylon. Dog won't eat now, won't even go outside." "Bobcat," Donnie shot back, too fast. "No, sir," Agnes replied, cool and even. "Said it whispered to him. Called his name from the trees. Bobcats don't do that, not even the clever ones." That left a stillness. Not long, but long enough. "Strange up there," Hank muttered into his mug. "Always has been." Outside, the town moved like it always does, slow and familiar. A teenage boy rattled by on a bike, grocery sack bouncing from one handlebar. The chapel bell rang out half-past, though no one's been inside in years. A lawnmower stuttered to life somewhere behind a row of old trailers. Sheriff Clay Jenkins rolled by in his beat-up '84 Bronco, elbow crooked out the window like it'd grown there. The engine coughed over the sound of something gospel, something warbly, probably cassette. Then, just barely, a dog barked. 3 times. Sharp. Panicked. Then, silence. Down by the river, the current moved slow, slower than usual. It carried silt, runoff, and reflections that sometimes looked too real. Some said the river could show you the sky. Others said it showed you something older, something waiting. Older than Eminence, older than the trees, older than names. And if you stood still, right near dusk, just long enough to forget you were alone, you might feel it. Not wind, not water, something else. A breath, a whisper. Not gone, just patient.
Chapter 2. The Dancer's Lament. It starts far from Eminence, in places like Chicago, Dallas, Biloxi, little pockets lit with stage lights and jukebox echoes. There, dancers named Venus, Nova, Karma vanish after the night shift. Their lives don't collapse in fireworks or scandals, they just stop. No calls, no text, no credit slips, and then nothing. Except one detail left behind each time, a single silver earring curled into a delicate fang shape. Polished, cold, precise, as though it were placed with intent. That becomes the whisper on every gossip blog, the headline nobody wants to print again. Detective Aria Morales in Kansas City isn't one to dismiss coincidences. She pores over thin police bulletins, piecing together the stops. Long-haul truck stops at midnight, each scene marked by that same Peterbilt 389, gleaming black, chrome sharp enough to see your reflection in. The driver? Nobody certain. One said an old man, another a southern woman with a polite voice and perfume that smelled like magnolias in summer heat. In a meat market office far from the Ozark hush, Aria pins red pushpins on a map, slowly, deliberately. They form an arrow across the Midwest, pointing back to one place, Eminence, Missouri. Back in town, the story slips back into Shirley's Cafe on a Friday, like morning coffee, slow at first, then buzzed up with rumors. Rufan Miller flaps open a yellowed newspaper. Another one gone, Tulsa this time. Lenora, that waitress with gravel under her tongue, leans over. Something about a truck. Black Peterbilt, Ruthann confirms, chrome trim, clean as Sunday best. Suddenly, the place quiets, a hush over the sourdough and coffee steam. That pattern, Hank says, his voice skips, it's gotta be connected. Donnie shrugs. Maybe they just run off. My cousin did, same age, rode off with some rodeo act. But Donnie doesn't seem to believe it. Buried in the sheriff's office drawers is a dusty file. Unresolved, Eminence M.O., 2003. Rosie Beckett, a dancer who called herself Echo, disappeared one night. A black rig spotted. And, well, there's that earring again. Clean, precise, whispered now across generations. No one's ever followed up. Later, Aria is hunched in a cubicle in Kansas City, the map glinting under yellow lamplight. Chicago, Memphis, Eminence. Always coming back here. She touches the Rosie Beckett spot again, soft. She says it under her breath. Eminence. Why does it always lead back to that ridge? Chapter 3. Ruby's Ride. Ruby Goss rolled into Eminence just after dusk, her Peterbilt 389 sliding through the empty streets like a ghost too graceful to rattle the gravel. The truck's black paint caught the town's fading neon signs and threw them back like half-remembered reflections, flickering, incomplete. She parked beside Harlan's Gas and Grocery, same spot she always favored, habit. The engine settled into silence with a soft sigh. Ruby stepped down with a fluid ease, heels tapping gentle against the ground, her plum-colored dress fluttering just enough to catch the corner of someone's eye, if anyone had been looking. Inside, the bell above the door gave its usual over-eager jangle. "Well, I'll be," said Earl, half laughing from behind the counter, like he hadn't rehearsed the line but was glad to get the chance. "Thought the road finally kept ya." Ruby smiled. Not wide, not coy, just easy. "You know me, the road keeps trying, but I tend to wander off." "Still drink your coffee black and your pie stolen?" he teased, already reaching under the counter. "If I didn't, you'd worry something was wrong with me." A couple of locals near the coolers lifted their brows. Wade Haskins gave a half wave. "That your rig out there, Ruby?" She nodded, slow. "Cleaned her yesterday, can't let the dust win." Donnie Millwright gave a low whistle. "Still shines like lake water at midnight." "Only thing in my life that behaves," Ruby said, smoothing her scarf with a fingertip. "And even she growls some mornings." They laughed, not too loud, just enough. She took her pie to the corner booth, her booth in all but name, and ate slow. The town outside was settling. You could feel it in your chest. The kind of hush that wasn't empty, but full of all the things nobody said aloud. Earl refilled her coffee, leaning in a bit. "Storm's coming. Ridge is already wearing a veil. Might be smart to stay till it passes." Ruby stirred her cup, not looking up. "I don't mind storms. Some things sound clearer when the thunder's talking." He paused, as if trying to figure out what that meant, then gave up and nodded. Back in her cab that night, Ruby sat a while before starting the engine. Her space was orderly. Curtains pulled neat, lavender sachet on the dash, no clutter, no chaos. That mattered to her. Control wasn't comfort, it was survival. She clicked on her CB. "Breaker 19, this is Lady Reaper. Anybody got eyes on the ridge?" Static. Then a voice, distant and female. "Quiet out there tonight." Ruby's hand hovered over the mic. "That's when you listen harder." She clicked off, shifted into gear. Her headlights carved through the mist like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. Past the bait shop, past the last porch light flickering on County Road 8. The trees leaned in as if to whisper things they hadn't whispered in years. In town, a shutter knocked softly in the wind. Somewhere, a bell rang once, though no hand had touched the rope. And high above, on the edge of the visible world, the Devil's Backbone watched, still, unblinking. Ruby's taillights vanished into the fog, like breath. She always came back, but no one knew where she went. Chapter 4: The Next Stop. Morning in Eminence comes slow, like it's remembering how. The Ozark Cafe buzzed with that easy rhythm, part habit, part inertia. Ceiling fans spun overhead with a soft click-click, stirring air that smelled of bacon grease, lemon floor cleaner, and blackberry cobbler. Or maybe that was just the ghost of cobbler past. Ruby sat at the counter beneath the faded mural of galloping horses, sipping her coffee like she was listening to it. Her cream blouse was crisp. Her scarf matched the sky, blue with specks like summer forget-me-nots. The whole look was careful but not forced. Like she woke up that way, put together and just a little too quiet. "You always dress like you've got somewhere better to be," Lenora said, sliding another cup her way. Her gravel voice cracked on the last word, as it always did when she was hiding concern behind sass. Ruby smiled, slow and small. "It's not a crime to show respect to breakfast." "Respect?" Lenora snorted. "You just don't want to blend in." Across the cafe, Wade Haskins wrestled with a newspaper that looked like it had been folded wrong since 1992. He slapped it onto the formica and jabbed a calloused finger. Poplar Bluff, another girl gone, dancer again, 25. "Jesus," Gene muttered, adjusting his hearing aid. "That's, what now, 4 this year?" "5, said Donnie. "They found a bracelet in the grass this time, like that Dallas girl." The room got quieter than usual. Forks hovered. Nobody moved to refill anything. Wade looked at Ruby, just long enough to make it feel like a question. "That your rig out there?" he asked, too casual. Ruby dabbed her mouth with a napkin. "It is." "She's clean," he said, voice going thin. "Runs smooth." Ruby tilted her head slightly, amused. "She'd better. I've fed her better than most men I've dated." The table chuckled, but it didn't reach their eyes. Lenora broke the pause.
My gran used to say the backbone called folks, especially women. Said the trees leaned away from it because they were trying to crawl back down. Ruby stirred her cup, eyes on the steam. That's a poetic way of putting it. She also said missing girls never leave. Not really, just shift, Lenora added. Said you could see their faces in the river mist if you were looking too long. That's superstition, Wade said, too fast. There's real danger out there. Bad men. That's all it is. Maybe, but nobody in the room argued with Lenora. Outside, the sky was thickening, clouds piling low like wet wool. Thunder gave a half-hearted grumble somewhere beyond the ridge. A storm was gathering itself, not hurrying. Ruby stood, scarf already knotted neat, eyes scanning the windows like they might offer confirmation. I should get going. You sure? Lenora asked, frowning now. That weather's turning mean. You could ride it out here. Ruby paused a second too long. No, she said softly. Some storms aren't meant to be missed. She left a 20 on the counter, tucked the change in the jar, and stepped out into the fog like she'd rehearsed it. Her heels tapped once, twice, then disappeared into gravel silence. Behind her, the cafe breathed out. Someone coughed, a spoon clanked, the normal things. But the quiet wasn't the same. Outside, her rig waited like a cathedral in chrome. Its engine hummed to life without protest, headlights cutting through the thickening mist like memory. Back inside, Wade leaned toward Lenora, lowering his voice. She gives me the chills sometimes. Lenora didn't stop wiping the counter. Only the ones who know something do. And outside, as the first drops fell and the clouds folded lower, the devil's backbone stood tall, wrapped in fog, waiting.
Chapter 5. The Hunter's Prey. Detective Aria Morales sat alone in the hum of her Kansas City office, the fluorescent light above her desk flickering like it couldn't decide whether to keep going. Papers sprawled across her desk like a map that refused to be folded. Everything smelled faintly of stale coffee and recycled air. The manila folder beneath her hands had a name scrawled across the tab in marker that had nearly faded to nothing. Tran, Lily, missing. She flipped it open again, even though she knew every line. One of a dozen, all dancers, all gone. Behind her, the corkboard was a mess of faces. Smiling, half-lit ID photos, blurry snapshots. Women frozen in time, mid-laugh, mid-glance, mid-life. Aria had pinned them up months ago. She still hadn't taken them down. Pete Langford walked in, juggling sunflower seeds and 2 bottles of off-brand soda. He dropped one on her desk. "You still chasing the ghost earrings?" he asked, cocking an eyebrow. Aria didn't blink. "They're not ghosts." "Right, no vampires either," Pete said, sinking into the opposite chair. "Still, no bodies, no witnesses, just a lot of theories and a long string of truck stops." She didn't respond, just flipped a page. "They all vanished after the graveyard shift. No noise, no trace, not even a fight." "And always with the earring," Pete muttered. "Same one?" Aria slid a plastic evidence bag toward him. Inside was the curved silver fang. "Always," she said. "Clean, placed just so, not dropped, not missed." Pete leaned in. "Rosie Beckett, that's the earliest. Far as I can tell, she disappeared in 2003, Eminence, Missouri. The files barely held together. Local cops figured she took off. No one looked twice." "Eminence," Pete echoed. "That's barely a town." "Still, it keeps coming up." He chewed a sunflower seed and spit the shell into his hand. "You know what they say about that place?" Aria looked up. "I've heard bits." "No, I mean really. Locals think there's something in the woods. They call it the Long One. Snake, spirit, woman, depends who you ask. Always whispers, never bites. Just takes." She snorted. "You believe that?" He shrugged. "Doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is that people down there do. The devil's backbone is basically local religion."
She turned toward the corkboard, eyes settling on the pinned photo of Rosie Beckett. It had yellowed around the edges. "Still no bodies," Pete said quietly. Aria tapped the edge of her desk. "Maybe we're not looking in the right places. Or maybe they never left the right place." That night, when Pete left and the office fell back into its usual late-night silence, Aria stayed. She lit another desk lamp and spread the maps across the floor. Chicago, Memphis, Tulsa, Poplar Bluff. Eminence, Eminence, Eminence. It was like everything kept circling that one invisible dot. Not on any highway, not on any route, but always there. And as she sat on the floor, surrounded by red string and names she didn't know how to forget, a thought lodged itself in her chest and wouldn't let go. Whatever this was, it had roots, deep ones, and it was waiting. Chapter 6. Into the Hollow. The road into Eminence didn't so much lead as unravel, twisting like someone had laid it down in a dream, one slow loop at a time. Trees leaned in overhead, forming a kind of half-formed tunnel. The mist hung low, thick as breath, and the hills rose around them like old gods too tired to move. Detective Aria Morales sat forward in the passenger seat, eyes scanning the roadside, as if answers might bloom from the gravel. "This place doesn't just feel remote," she muttered. "It feels sealed off, like something closed the door behind us." Pete Langford adjusted the AC vents, useless against the heavy July air. "Population's under 600, probably less if you count the ones who don't leave the porch. No Starbucks? No stoplights either. This is the kind of place where the ghosts have names and birthdays." They pulled up to the sheriff's office, stone building, ivy creeping like it had somewhere to be. The paint peeled in slow curls. A busted wind chime tapped once, and then nothing. Sheriff Clay Jenkins waited on the porch, tall and built like someone who still chopped his own firewood. He nodded as they climbed out. "Detectives," he said. His handshake was firm, no theatrics. "Appreciate y'all making the trip." Aria smiled politely. "We've reviewed the Rosie Beckett file. It reads like a wallet went missing, not a woman." Clay sighed. "Different time, different sheriff. She danced out at that bar off Route 9. Nobody here thought twice about her going missing." Pete squinted up at the sun. "We're hoping you can walk us through where she was last seen." Clay scratched at his beard. "I can do you one better." Inside the office, past old team photos and a trophy case that hadn't been dusted since the 90s, Clay led them to a back room. Small, quiet, a fan humming like it didn't want to be noticed. He opened a metal drawer, pulled out a file labeled Beckett, R, unresolved. One bartender said she left around 1:45 a.m., told someone she was heading back to a rental near Miller Hollow. That's off County Road 18, not far from the Backbone. Pete leaned in. "The Devil's Backbone?" Clay nodded slowly. "Locals don't go near it, not after dark, not for a long while." Aria flipped through the file. A map fell out, hand-drawn, old pen lines. One spot circled in red. X marks the forgotten. "There's a name we keep hearing," she said. "Harlan Boone?" Clay's mouth went tight. "Yeah, he's out past Mill Creek. Retired biology teacher. Keeps snakes." Pete perked up. "Snakes?" "Legally, far as I know. Ball pythons, boas, even some rattlers. Used to bring him to the fall festival. Taught at the high school before he changed." Aria raised an eyebrow. "Changed?" "Stopped coming into town. Stopped talking. Just disappeared into that house of his like the world stopped being worth it." "No search?" Clay nodded once. "Tried. His cousin chased us off with a 12 gauge. No warrant, no dice." Pete shook his head. "And no one thought to press?" "Folks around here don't press. Not unless they want something pressing back." Aria stared at the red X on the map. "We're gonna need that address." Later, they followed Clay's directions down a dirt road that felt more memory than pavement. Vines scraped the windshield. The air grew thick, heavy, almost wet. They passed an old mailbox that read, Boone, RFD number 3, crooked, faded. The house appeared slowly, half sunken into the hill. Tarps stretched over cages that hummed with the sound of heat lamps and something breathing you couldn't quite hear. Pete killed the engine. You sure about this? Aria opened her door. Never. They crossed the yard. The motion light blinked on. Inside the cages, something stirred, a slow, deliberate coil. Then, the door creaked. A man in his 60s appeared barefoot in the frame. Flannel shirt, rope for a belt, white ponytail, eyes like uncut stone. Harlan Boone? Aria asked, evenly. I know who I am, he said, and I know what you're here for, but I didn't take her. We just want to ask about Rosie Beckett, Pete said. Boone's face didn't change. Rosie fed my snakes. She talked to them like they were people. What happened to her? Boone looked off into the woods. When he spoke, it was like he was talking to the trees. She went up the ridge. Some places up there, they don't belong to us. Not anymore. Not anymore. Well, not for a long while. Aria flipped through the file. A map fell out. Hand-drawn. Old pen lines. One spot circled in red. X marks the forgotten. There's a name we keep hearing, she said. Harlan Boone? Clay's mouth went tight. Yeah, he's out past Mill Creek. Retired biology teacher. Keeps snakes. Pete perked up. Snakes? Legally, far as I know. Ball pythons, boas, even some rattlers. Used to bring them to the fall festival. Taught at the high school before he changed. Aria raised an eyebrow. Changed? Stopped coming into town. Stopped talking. Just disappeared into that house of his like the world stopped being worth it. No search? Clay nodded once. Tried. His cousin chased us off with a 12-gauge. No warrant, no dice. Pete shook his head. And no one thought to press? Folks around here don't press. Not unless they want something pressing back. Aria stared at the red X on the map. We're gonna need that address. Later, they followed Clay's directions down a dirt road that felt more memory than pavement. Vines scraped the windshield. The air grew thick, heavy, almost wet. They passed an old mailbox that read, Boone, RFD number 3, crooked, faded. The house appeared slowly, half sunken into the hill. Tarps stretched over cages that hummed with the sound of heat lamps and something breathing you couldn't quite hear. Pete killed the engine. You sure about this? Aria opened her door. Never. They crossed the yard. The motion light blinked on. Inside the cages, something stirred, a slow, deliberate coil. Then, the door creaked. A man in his 60s appeared barefoot in the frame. Flannel shirt, rope for a belt, white ponytail, eyes like uncut stone. Harlan Boone? Aria asked, evenly. I know who I am, he said, and I know what you're here for, but I didn't take her. We just want to ask about Rosie Beckett, Pete said. Boone's face didn't change. Rosie fed my snakes. She talked to them like they were people. What happened to her? Boone looked off into the woods. When he spoke, it was like he was talking to the trees. She went up the ridge. Some places up there, they don't belong to us. Not anymore. What you saying the mountain took her? Pete asked, incredulous. I'm saying the mountain listens, Boone replied. We need to search your property. Boone stared at Aria, long and quiet. You won't find what you think you're looking for. He stepped back into the dark. The door stayed open, but the air changed, like the breath had been sucked out of the trees. Inside the cages, the snakes moved together, slow, silent, watching. And in the woods behind the house, the hush thickened, like something had wakened up just to listen.
Chapter 7. The Moon and the Mirror. Club Halo breathed like a tired lung. Low lights, old wood, and music with too much bass and not enough soul. The floor was sticky in the way every club floor always is. Perfume mixed with spilled liquor and whatever dreams got shed between songs. Marina Alvarez, stage name Luna, stood in front of the cracked dressing room mirror, dabbing highlighter onto the curve of her cheek. The light buzzed overhead. Her reflection blinked back at her, half tired, half performing. Her phone buzzed again. Maddie, 9:57 p.m. You still coming Sunday? Mommy's making tamales. Marina stared at it, thumb hovering. She thought about the rent, the pink envelope on the counter, the gas tank below empty. She thought about Maddie's living room, pillows fluffed, kid shoes by the door, salsa music low in the background. She didn't respond. Not yet. You're up, Luna, Dom called, his voice cutting through the makeup haze. She tightened the straps on her boots, adjusted her top, and headed toward the stage. Cherry and Roxy giggled by the mini-fridge, already halfway drunk on dollar shots and denial. You look cute tonight, Cherry offered, though she didn't mean it cruelly. Thanks, Marina said, because it was easier. The DJ's voice purred from the booth. Make some noise for Luna, y'all. She's ya moonlight, ya mystery. She hated the name, Luna. Her ex had picked it, back when she thought this gig was a 3-month detour, not a 5-year address. Luna sounded soft, ethereal, untouchable. Marina was none of those things. She moved through her routine like muscle memory, bends, dips, spins. The men didn't cheer loud, some watched without blinking, one coughed through the whole thing. It was a Thursday crowd. 2 songs later, she peeled bills off the floor, crumpled 5s, sweaty singles. Someone had tossed a wrapped mint. She didn't take it. At the bar, Cherry leaned on one elbow, nursing something peach-colored and tragic. You ever think about quittin'? She asked. Every day. So why stay? Marina sipped her ginger ale. Landlords don't take poetry. Cherry blinked, like that hit harder than expected. You write poetry? Used to, Marina said, back when I thought I had something to say. At 2:15 a.m., she stepped out into the parking lot. The air was wet with humidity. Trash bags by the dumpster leaked shadows. Something didn't feel wrong exactly, just tilted. She paused by her car. The breeze shifted. It carried the faint scent of lilac. There were no lilacs anywhere near this place. She looked once, twice. Nothing. She got in, locked the doors, and sat still a moment before turning the key. The engine coughed to life like it was waking from a nightmare. She didn't cry. Not tonight. But she drove the long way home, windows down, like she was trying to let something out. Back in her apartment, she microwaved a burrito she didn't want and lit the candle she'd been saving. Lavender, barely fragrant. She sat at the table, pulled out the notebook she hadn't touched in months, and stared at the first blank page. She wrote, "Some girls vanish all at once. Others fade like a slow song." She stared at the line, crossed it out. Left the notebook open anyway. Sometimes, even bad poetry was proof you existed. Chapter 8. Velvet Roads. Fog lay low over the hills like it had business there. Ruby Goss guided her car along the back roads with the same care a violinist gives a bow. Quiet, deliberate, elegant. She'd left her truck behind in West Plains, tucked away at a friend's lot with a full tank and a clean windshield. Said she needed a break from gears and chrome. Civilian time, she called it. Nobody questioned her. She wore a long linen coat that trailed just past her knees, lavender gloves that didn't look like they were meant for work, and a pair of sunglasses far too glamorous for a sunrise drive through Shannon County. Her scarf was tied beneath her chin, pale green with faded pink roses, something a woman might inherit rather than buy. She stopped at Granger Station, a lonely fuel stop leaning into itself just outside of town. The windows were more dirt than glass, and the door creaked like it had opinions. The bell jangled. The old man behind the counter blinked at her, like maybe he was looking at a memory. "Well, hell," he said, adjusting his suspenders, "if it ain't Miss Ruby."
Ruby smiled like it was the first time all morning. "Morning, Granger." "You still out there running?" She handed him 2 20s. "Still moving." He rang her up with slow fingers. "Folks say we've got trouble brewing. Wind smells strange. Found a coyote near Miller Hollow, twisted up like something got it that don't belong on 4 legs." Ruby tucked her change into her pocket. "Nature's always talking. Most folks just forget how to listen." Granger scratched his temple. "You always did talk like a poem." She tipped her head slightly. "Maybe you're just hearing me better than most." Outside, she paused beside the pump. The mist was thicker now, curling in little tendrils around her ankles. The air smelled faintly, impossibly, of water lilies. There was no pond nearby. She stood still, just long enough to feel it. A shift, a ripple. Something new had entered the current. A girl. Not here, not yet, but close enough to notice. Ruby didn't say her name aloud. That would be too forward, too soon. But she felt her, like a note played on the edge of hearing. By noon, Ruby sat at a scenic overlook off Highway 19, sipping tea from a rose-patterned thermos. Her book, Wuthering Heights, dog-eared and caped at the spine, rested in her lap. She read the same paragraph 3 times without turning the page. Somewhere down the road, thunder rolled without urgency. She turned slightly, glancing at her rearview mirror. The ridge loomed in the glass, devil's backbone, ink black against the light. Locals said the trees didn't grow right up there. They were right. Ruby didn't visit the ridge often, but she never really left it either. Later, she stopped for dinner at a roadside cafe just outside Eminence. The waitress looked barely old enough to vote. Nervous smile, chewing gum. "You passin' through?" she asked, pouring Ruby's lemon water too fast. Ruby unfolded her napkin. "I'm always just passing through." "You from around here?" "No, but I know the place. Better than I ought to." She ordered trout, ate in slow, measured bites. Left a 20 for a $13 bill and a note folded neatly beneath the saucer. "Thank you for the kindness. Some things vanish, some drift." She didn't sign it. That night, she parked just off the ridge road. The trees whispered, but not in words. The wind had settled into something that sounded like remembering. She stepped out, unwrapped her scarf, and lifted her face to the rising moon. Somewhere north, across towns and rooftops and unspoken weight, Ruby felt it again. A girl. Not broken, not yet, but tired in a way the body never explains. Ruby closed her eyes, and without meaning to, spoke the name into the dark. Marina. She didn't smile. She never smiled when the current changed. Chapter 9. Her Name in the Wind. It was close to 3 a.m. when Marina Alvarez finally counted her tips in the dressing room at Club Halo. The others had scattered, some to bad decisions, others to worse silence. She stayed behind. The air was thick with the smell of floor cleaner and vanilla lotion, the mirror fogged faintly from too many hours of sweat and cotton candy body spray. She sat alone under the flickering fluorescent bulb. 32 ones, 2 5s, a gum wrapper with a phone number in purple ink. She exhaled slowly. Not a sigh, just air she didn't need anymore. No one was waiting for her at home. There wasn't even a real home to go to. Just a 1-bedroom above the liquor store that always smelled like bleach and boiling cabbage. She pulled her hoodie over her tank top, shoved the bills into her tote, and stepped outside. The parking lot was still, too still. The kind of quiet that didn't feel earned, like the night was holding its breath. She walked with her head down, keys in hand. When she reached her car, she paused. The air had shifted. There it was again, faint but distinct. Lilac. She turned, scanned, nothing. She climbed in, locked the doors, and sat a full minute before starting the engine. Her headlights cut across the cracked pavement. Near the dumpster, something shimmered. Maybe glass, maybe dew, maybe nothing at all. By the time she looked again, it was gone. At home, she lit the lavender candle she hadn't touched in weeks. She watched it flicker and thought about texting Maddie. Thought about the tamales, the flan, the way her mother's voice used to sound before they stopped asking where the money came from. She picked up her old notebook, flipped past poems that felt too raw now, too honest. She scribbled, "There is something out there that only sees tired girls," then crossed it out. Still, she didn't close the notebook. The next morning, her phone buzzed. "Maddie, 4:44. Mom says to bring an appetite. She's making arroz con pollo." Marina stared at the message. After a long pause, she typed, "Tell her I'm coming," then turned the phone face down. The club was quiet that night. Rain had chased most of the regulars away. She danced once, then claimed cramps and sat at the bar sipping ginger ale, looking condensation trail down the glass. Then the woman walked in. Silk scarf, pale coat, pearl earrings. She didn't look lost. She didn't look curious. She looked like she'd chosen the moment when she stepped through the door. Ruby. Though Marina didn't know her name, not yet. Still, she felt it. Something magnetic, something heavy. The woman smiled at her. Polite, nothing more. Marina looked away too quickly. She asked the bartender, "Who's that?" He shrugged. Said her name's Ruby, ordered chamomile tea, tipped $20 like it was nothing. Chamomile? Here? He nodded. I didn't even know we had it. Marina looked again. The woman was no longer watching, but Marina still felt it. A tug, a hum, like a song she hadn't heard since childhood, but still somehow knew all the words to. She turned back to her drink, tried not to think about it, but her name lingered in the air. Not spoken, just known.
Chapter 10. The Night Bends. Marina Alvarez woke just before noon, drenched in sweat. The air conditioner thumped its tired hum from the window, but the sheets were twisted and damp, her skin sticky like she'd slept inside a fever. The candle on her nightstand had burned down to a puck of wax. For a second, she didn't remember where she was, not fully. Then the morning sounds pulled her back. Glass bottles clinking downstairs, the bark of a delivery guy laughing at his own joke, the soft hiss of traffic edging past the liquor store. She sat up slowly. Everything felt tilted. At Club Halo, she didn't dance. Told Dom her stomach was off. He waved her off with a grunt and a warning about docked tips. She didn't care, not tonight. She sat at the bar, ginger ale in hand, the glass sweating in her fingers. The music thudded softly, too slow, too distant. It felt like a heartbeat she couldn't place. The girls laughed behind her, same as always, but the laughter sounded wrong, like a track looped too long. She kept glancing at the mirrors. The one behind the bar, the one in the hallway, even the old one near the coat rack that never reflected light quite right. Each time, she expected something, she didn't know what, to be different. Once, she turned too fast and caught her own reflection a beat too late, like it was lagging behind. She blinked. Just her. But still. Back home, she filled the tub halfway and sank in. The water wasn't hot enough. Her shoulders never quite relaxed. The candle she lit sputtered and flared. She closed her eyes. That was when she heard it. Soft, deliberate, not imagined. Marina. Not in her head, not behind the wall. Closer, like a whisper curling under the bathroom door. She sat up, sloshing water onto the floor. Nothing. She stepped out, wrapped in a towel, and checked every room. The hallway, the closet, the lock. All fine, all closed. Still, she didn't sleep. Later, in some half-dream that didn't feel like one, she saw snakes. Thin, endless, slithering across the floor like threads pulled loose. One disappeared beneath the bed. Another coiled through the lamp cord, quiet as breath. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She just watched. The air smelled of ash and something floral she couldn't name. When she finally woke, if she'd slept at all, her hands were cold. The room was silent. She turned on the lamp. Nothing moved. The next morning, she opened the door to leave for work and stopped cold. There, on the mat, was a single white lily, wrapped in a pale green ribbon. No card, no note, just the flower. Perfect. Waiting. She looked around. No footsteps, no delivery slips. Just her. Just the morning. Just the fog settling a little too fast. She bent to pick it up. It smelled like memory. Not hers exactly. Just familiar. Like something she'd carried before she had words for it. That night at the club, she couldn't stop watching the door. She didn't know who she was waiting for, but part of her already knew they were coming. Maybe they'd always been. And when the music dipped low, when the room leaned into silence for just a breath too long, she heard it again. Not her name, just breath. Sharp, close, calling her somewhere she hadn't yet chosen to go. Chapter 11: The Garden and the Guest. Ruby Goss woke before dawn, as she always did. No alarm, just the weight of habit and a stillness in her bones that told her the day had shifted, subtly, like the wind changing direction in the middle of a sentence. The cabin was hushed, the kind of quiet that wrapped itself around your wrists and made you slow down. She moved barefoot across the wooden floor, silk robe trailing just above her ankles. No television, no mirrors, nothing digital except a stove that clicked softly as it lit. Outside, the fog curled around the porch like it had business there. The wind chimes stirred, low wood notes, spaced out, uncertain. She didn't speak at first, just moved, like she was walking through the memory of a house, not the house itself. The garden was still damp when she stepped outside. Her breath ghosted in the air, even though the morning was warm. She crouched beside a patch of mint and lavender, fingers brushing gently through the stems. Bees hovered nearby, indifferent to her presence. She picked a few sprigs and whispered, not quite to them, for the tea, and for the guest, and for the guest. She didn't say Marina's name. That wasn't her place. But she felt the girl now, restless, unsure, pulled like a compass needle with nowhere to settle. She's nearly here, Ruby murmured. She's circling. Back inside, she boiled water and set the table for two. Porcelain teacups, thin as bone. A folded note tucked beneath one saucer. Ivory paper, no name. Just a sentence, small and delicate. If you've come this far, you're meant to. She didn't decorate, didn't fuss. Just opened the window and let the fog drift through like an old friend. Mid-morning, she drove into town in a pale blue skirt and a blouse soft as breath. Her gloves matched the trim on her heels. No one stopped her. A few locals nodded, but mostly they watched from under brims and behind coffee cups. She stopped at the florist, the one with dusty glass and a cat asleep in the window. The grow behind the counter blinked when Ruby stepped in. Can I help you?" "I need something soft," Ruby said. "Something that says, you don't have to run anymore." The girl hesitated, then pointed towards a half-empty cooler. Lilies just came in, white ones. Ruby touched one stem, gently. Yes, that'll do. She bought just one, wrapped in paper, tied with green ribbon. No card. By twilight, Ruby stood on the porch again, watching the fog roll off the ridge like smoke from something old. The wind had stilled. The crickets were quieter than usual. She sipped her tea. The mint was sharp on her tongue. "She's seen it," she said softly. "The flower, the breath, the mirror." She paused, then smiled. Small, kind, unreadable. She finished her cup, then turned toward the woods and lit the lantern on the path. Because some guests don't knock. They just arrive. Chapter 12: Smoke and Mirrors. The air behind Club Halo was thick with sweat and motor oil and something else, something older. Marina stood near the edge of the lot, hoodie zipped, heart thudding with no real rhythm. The sky was soft with coming rain. Her boots crunched in gravel, but no one was there to hear it.
She didn't know why she hadn't gone home. Maybe she was waiting for the world to shift. Maybe it already had. She reached into her bag for her keys and froze. There, tucked between a gum wrapper and her cracked phone case, was an envelope. Ivory, heavy, unstamped. She turned it over. No name. She opened it. Inside, 4 handwritten words, careful as breath. Somewhere quieter, if you wish. Beneath it, an address. No street name, just a county road and a mile marker. Her hand trembled slightly. Not fear, recognition. Across town, Detective Aria Morales climbed out of the rental car, the neon sign of Club Halo still humming, barely. The place looked exhausted. Her boots crunched in the gravel as she stepped toward the back door. Inside, everything smelled burned and forgotten. The manager said he barely remembered the girl who vanished last. The name Lori May had already begun fading from the forms. She was supposed to work that night, he mumbled, already lighting another cigarette. She didn't clock in? Aria asked. Nope, didn't even show. But she had. Aria was sure of it. She walked the perimeter, the alley, the back lot. She paused by the dumpster. There, half tucked beneath a plastic crate, was a sliver of green ribbon. Faint scent of lilac. She picked it up. Didn't say a word. Marina sat on the edge of her bed. She hadn't moved in half an hour. Her keys sat beside her on the blanket. The note was folded in her lap. Her phone buzzed. Maddie, 9:03 a.m. Mom says she's saving you flan. You better show up. Marina stared at the message. She nearly answered. Then she didn't. At the club, Aria crouched near a broken chair in the dressing room. Something caught her eye in the dust beneath it, a glint of silver. She reached for it, pulled out a familiar shape, a curved silver earring. Not dropped, not lost, placed. Pete stepped in behind her. Another one? Aria nodded. Same make, same shine, same damn silence. She looked up at the mirror on the wall. The room behind her felt thinner than it had 5 minutes ago, like something had slipped through. Marina walked past her hallway mirror without looking, down the stairs, into the air, into the quiet. She didn't know where she was going, but part of her had known this road all her life, and now it had finally called her by name. Chapter 13, What the Dead Remember. Miller Hollow didn't show up on any GPS. Detective Aria Morales stood just off the trail, one boot sinking slightly into moss. The trees here were taller, closer together. They leaned toward each other like old friends with secrets too heavy for daylight. The stillness wasn't peaceful, it was expectant. Behind her, Pete Langford exhaled through his nose and slapped a mosquito from his neck. This place feels cursed. Aria didn't answer. She was watching how the light shifted through the leaves, angled weird, like it hadn't gotten the memo about gravity. Locals say girls don't get lost up here, Pete continued. They get called. Aria crouched beside a tree whose bark had spiraled in on itself, twisted like it had been turned from the inside out. She touched the dirt beneath it. Crushed, not trampled, no boot prints, just pressure, human weight. Barefoot, and beside that, a petal, white, lilac, fresh. She held it up. Pete stepped closer. You think she was here? I think someone wants us to know she was. He shifted uneasily. You ever stop and think we're not supposed to find anything? Aria stood. I don't care what I'm supposed to do. I came here to end something. Pete went quiet. They kept walking. Back in town, the cafe was half full and murmuring. The waitress poured coffee with one hand and flipped through the newspaper with the other. She's out there, someone whispered. The dancer, the new one, disappeared like the rest. No, someone else muttered. She was different. They didn't say Marina's name. They didn't have to. The town already knew. Up the ridge, Aria stepped through a gap in the trees and paused. The woods had narrowed, tighter here, quieter. Even the birds had gone quiet. She turned slowly, felt it again, that sensation like being watched by something too old to need eyes. "Let's keep going," she said. Pete hesitated. "Where?" Aria stared toward the backbone. The map didn't name this stretch. The air smelled different, damp stone and old flowers. "Where the others went," she said. "Where the trail ends or starts over." Pete said nothing. Because sometimes, even cops know when they've left the law behind. Chapter 14. The Final Encounter. The gravel road just past mile marker 73 curved like it didn't want to be followed. Trees leaned in heavy, the fog hanging low, thick enough to feel on your tongue. Marina Alvarez stepped out of the car slowly, like someone afraid of waking something up. The wind didn't move, but the air smelled expectant, mint, lavender, rain just about to fall. Ahead of her stood a gate half wrapped in honeysuckle, barely visible behind the overgrowth. A narrow path cut through, lined with flat stones that had no moss on them, even though everything else did. She didn't ask herself if she should turn back. She'd stopped asking questions like that a long time ago. The cabin stood at the end of the trail, quiet and half wrapped in fog. Not spooky, not even old, just still, as if it had grown from the trees instead of being built. The door was open. Inside, a small table, already set for two. One cup steaming gently. Beside it, a folded note. "You made it. I'm so glad." She didn't move, not at first. Then, the softest sound, bare feet on wood. Ruby entered the room like a whisper between gusts. She wore green, soft and flowing, like lichen, like water. Her hair was pinned back with silver combs. Her eyes, those unsettling, knowing eyes, settled on Marina with no surprise at all. "You came," she said, like they were old friends finally meeting in person. "I didn't mean to," Marina said, voice smaller than she expected. "Yes, you did." Ruby poured tea for her with hands that didn't shake. The steam rose. The mint curled in the air like breath. Marina stayed standing. "What is this?" "A conversation," Ruby said. "A kindness, a choosing." "I don't understand." "You will." Marina's hands curled around themselves. "Are you going to hurt me?" Ruby looked almost wounded. "No, Marina, I don't hurt the girls. I take their weight, their forgetting, their silence, the things they've carried too long." Marina's throat tightened. "So you take them?" "I lift them. I offer stillness." "And if I don't want that?" "Then you return. You carry it. You remember." Marina sat, slowly. "And if I stay?" "You unmake," Ruby said. "You become soft again, unbroken." Marina blinked hard. "I don't know what's worse." Ruby didn't answer. She only offered the tea. Down the trail, Aria Morales stumbled over a root, flashlight shaking in her grip. The air shifted. A warmth rolled over her chest like breath from an unseen mouth. She was close, so close. She heard her name, not spoken, not whispered, just known. "Marina!" She shouted at once, sharp as a warning. Inside the cabin, Marina flinched. Outside, thunder grumbled. Ruby tilted her head. "You can go, or you can stay. Both are real. Both are yours." The tea steamed quietly. The light dimmed, and Marina reached for the cup. She didn't say yes. She didn't have to. Epilogue. The Vanishing. 3 hours after the storm passed, Aria Morales stood at the edge of what should have been the cabin. But there was nothing. No door, no porch, no smoke, not even footprints. Just flattened grass, damp soil that still held a strange warmth, like something had been here for a long time and left in a hurry. Pete paced the perimeter, rubbing the back of his neck like it would help. "You sure this is the spot?" "It was here," Aria said quietly. "The trail ends here. 2 sets of prints, then nothing. No cabin, no tire marks, hell, not even a nail." She didn't answer, just stared into the trees like they might blink and show her what she missed. The trees didn't blink. Back in town, she tried to ask around. No one remembered Marina Alvarez. There were no pay stubs at Club Halo, no apartment above the liquor store. Even the address Aria had traced was now a shuttered unit, rented out 6 months ago to a retired teacher who had never heard the name. "You got the name right?" the landlord asked, chewing gum slowly. "Nah, never had a Marina, not even a maybe." Aria walked the hallway anyway, stood in front of the apartment that should have been hers. The door had a different number now. They drove to Club Halo. It was gone. Not shuttered, not closed, just gone. The parking lot was overgrown. The sign had collapsed. The city record showed a fire 4 years ago. No one rebuilt. There was no bartender, no file, no trace, only ash. And a wind that didn't belong to this summer. That night, in her motel room, Detective Morales stayed up rereading every case file. Rosie, Lily, Lori, Marina. None of them had records that held up. No family willing to talk, no traceable exits. She stared at the wall and thought about what Ruby said. You return and carry, or you stay and unmake. It sounded insane. It also sounded true. Just before dawn, someone slid something under her door. No knock, no footsteps, just paper. She opened it slowly. Pressed between the folds was a white lily, and beneath it, a note. You were never meant to follow. She stepped outside, expecting she didn't know what. Nothing. Only fog. In the distance, the devil's backbone waited, sharp against the morning. It hadn't moved. It didn't need to. Somewhere in those ridges, in the hush beneath the roots and the fog that never lifts, something still breathed. Not hunting, not hiding, just remembering and waiting. Author's note, told by someone who's lived here too long. You won't find her name in any town archive, not the real one anyway. But around here, if you say Ruby in the right tone, folks know exactly who you mean. Quiet type, wears that same silk scarf no matter the season. Looks the same now as she did when my uncle was still raising hell in high school. Some say she's just old folklore, made up to scare kids off the quarry trail. But stories don't make the birds stop singing when they pass by. My grandmother swore the tale was family truth. Said that ridge wasn't always called Devil's Back. Way before maps pinned names on things, something walked those woods. Didn't cast a shadow. Not a ghost, older than that. A thing forgotten not by accident, but on purpose. Gran said she didn't always look like she does now. That face came later, taken or maybe gifted from some poor girl who couldn't carry it any longer. But before the scarf, before the name Ruby, she was something else. Lamia. We don't say it out loud anymore, not if we've got sense. That name's got gravity, makes the dirt lean in. The old stories, the Greek ones, they got the shape of her but missed the marrow. They said she wept, they said she fed. True enough, I guess. But they missed why. She didn't feed because she was starving. She was starving because she still remembered. There was warmth once, the real kind. Little hands in hers, skin that didn't peel off like old wallpaper. A heartbeat that didn't echo. But the gods, or whatever passes for them, don't let grief sit still for long. They tore her heart out and then scolded her for the noise it made. So she stopped making noise. Didn't mean she got safer. These days, she moves like memory's residue, the kind that lingers in a place after someone's gone. The snakes in the rocks know her. They go still when she passes. Girls, mostly young ones, the kind who cry hard and don't know why, feel her before she's even arrived. And when someone's pain rings loud enough, when they wander too close to the ledge, she shows up. Ruby, that scarf, that voice that sounds like rain threatening to start. She's not a savior. She's not a monster either. She's something else. She offers a place to fall into, a reason to let go, the chance to be someone or something older, stranger, maybe freer. Is that mercy or a slow undoing? Well, that's the chooser's burden. Just don't pretend no one told you.